Okay, I'm going to try to walk you through a procedure for midtone contrast adjustment or enhancement that I think is very useful with lots of images. I'm starting here with an image imported from Lightroom, a raw file. It's been given minimal adjustments in Lightroom, and then as you can see here in Photoshop, I've given it a curves adjustment, a hue and saturation, as well as some local tone, which is a variation on dodge and burn technique. So to now, if I otherwise like the image, midtone contrast adjustment is typically done as a last step before sharpening. So with the top layer in your stack highlighted, open this little drop down, and while pressing the Option key or Alt key on a PC, click on Merge Visible. And you'll see what that does is create a new top layer in the stack that is essentially a flattened version of everything below here at the top of the stack. So now we're going to change the blend mode for that layer to overlay, and then we're going to up to the filter palette and pick Other and then High Pass, and we're going to adjust depending on whatever the high pass filter was used for previously. Adjust it to somewhere in the 50s in terms of radius and say OK. Then we're going to double click on the layer itself, on the mask, and that will open up the layer style palette and the blend if mode. So here we're going to use this underlying layer in blend if, and we're going to grab the slider and move it up to about 50. And what this is doing is telling the adjustment to begin to take effect at a luminosity level of about 50. And then by holding the Option key again and clicking over to the right, we separate the two sliders. And so this is telling it to fade in the effect between a luminance value of about 50 and fade it fully in by 75. So it's a gradual fade in. And then for the fade out, we're going to go down to about 185. And then it doesn't have to be exact, but between 185 and about 210. Okay, and then we'll bring our opacity level down to a starting point of, say, 35, and we'll click OK. Just to be clear, what this is really doing is saying we want this contrast enhancement to happen primarily between these mid-tone values, between 75 and 185, with a fade in below that and a fade out above that. So then we'll click OK, and a good way to see this is just turn the layer on and off, and you can see the impact. And it's interesting because when the layer was, or the image was open here and otherwise adjusted, it didn't really look bland or flat. But it's very interesting, as this gets turned on and off, you can really see the difference it makes. And if you feel that the effect is a little too strong, you can turn it down. Sometimes being a little more subtle is better. In some instances, I find that turning it up higher is really helpful. I think in this case, this begins to make it look a little too contrasty, even though all we're impacting are the midtones. So I'm going to take it back to about 35 and call it good. One thing that's interesting to do is just to double check, sometimes this high pass layer will carry color artifacts. So an interesting way to check is turn off the other layers, turn the opacity all the way up, and you can see there is some color information in there. So what we do is go up to Image Adjustments and hit Desaturate, and boom, all the color goes away. The other thing that this look is helpful for, you can see there's sort of a halo effect at the top of the trees in the sky. And when I turn the rest of the layers back on, and turn the opacity back down to say 35, you can see that it's there a bit. I'm not really finding it terribly troublesome. But I think what I might do, sometimes if you've got sky, you know, like a mountain range with sky behind, that halo effect is a little strong. So we put in an adjustment layer, take our paintbrush here, make sure that we've got full opacity. And what I do is take a smallish brush and just paint, and you can just see the halo effect goes away as we paint around the edge of the trees, where the tree meets the sky. So then we just bring it back to full screen, and now that looks pretty natural. Once again, there it was without, and there it is with the effect dialed in. So midtone contrast. Oh, and what I typically do is rename the file something like midcon, just so you remember what that adjustment was for. Okay, that's it for midtone contrast. We'll do the sharpening in another video.